The human had been building structures for 3 days, and Krynathi was fairly certain that constituted cheating. Administrator, we have a Code 17 violation in Sector 9. His assistant's voice crackled through the comm, tension making the translator glitch. The human participant is constructing. Krynathi claws clicked against the observation panel as he pulled up the thermal imaging. 200 species had been deposited on the ice world of Kelvar 72 hours ago, each sealed in their individual survival shelter with precisely calculated rations. The winter trial had remained unchanged for 10,000 years. Endure the 6-month freeze, prove your species' worthiness through suffering, emerge stronger. 60% elimination rate, historically. The survivors joined the Galactic Council with honor. The human, James Wilson, the file read, hadn't stayed in his shelter. He'd built 3 stone structures that radiated heat signatures. That's impossible, Krynathi muttered. The thermal output alone should be. Sir, we're also reading smoke. Smoke? Yes, sir. And approximately 37 participants have abandoned their designated shelters and are converging on the human's position. Krynathi felt his respiratory sacs contract. In 10 millennia of trials, participants stayed in their shelters. They rationed. They endured. They suffered in dignified isolation until the thaw or until they didn't. Nobody converged. He triggered the emergency protocol. Within minutes, senior observer Azila materialized on the command deck, her scales reflecting irritation in the monitor light. This better be critical, Krynathi. I was reviewing the Sector 4 appropriations. The human is building ovens. Azila went very still. Ovens. Plural, and feeding other participants. Warm meals, apparently. That's... Azila pulled up the live feed. The human, clad in inadequate thermal gear by any reasonable standard, was stacking stones with methodical precision while a Velkari cub watched with all 6 eyes wide. Steam rose from what appeared to be a clay pot. The smell indicators were going haywire. That's not in the trial parameters. Technically, Krynathi said carefully, there's no rule against construction. There's no rule against it because nobody has ever been insane enough to try. Azila's tail lashed. The trial is about endurance, survival, proving you can withstand. He's withstanding just fine. He's also apparently baking. Survival expert Vex Thul joined them, his massive frame filling the doorway. I received the alert. Show me. Krynathi replayed the feed. They watched James Wilson add wood to a stone structure, adjust something inside with a long paddle, and extract what the computer identified as cooked grain product. 3 cubs from different species sat nearby, chirping and chittering. The temperature is -80 Celsius, Vex Thul said slowly. His species file indicates humans require climate control below -40. He built a fire, Krynathi said. You can't just build a fire on Kelvar. The wind, the moisture content, He did, though. They watched as James broke the grain product into pieces and handed them to the cubs, who immediately began eating. One of them, a small Zikrin, if Krynathi identified correctly, made a sound the computer translated as delicious. I'm disqualifying him, Azila decided. This violates the spirit of the trial. On what grounds? On the grounds that he's making the winter trial look like a casual camping expedition. That's not actually grounds. Azila's comm chirped. She listened, her scales fading to pale gray. Medical Division reports 15 cubs have left their family shelters and are now at the human's location. Temperature there is reading. That can't be right. 40 degrees above ambient? Krynathi rechecked the sensors. Confirmed. He's created a microclimate. In 3 days. In 3 days. Vexthul leaned closer to the screen. What is he building now? A second stone structure was taking shape, larger than the first. James was directing 2 adult Catharan participants in stone placement, demonstrating something with his hands. They seemed to understand, their mandibles clicking in what the computer identified as enthusiastic agreement. He's teaching them, Azila whispered. He's teaching other species his methods during an elimination trial. The comm erupted with incoming alerts. Krynath's screens filled with reports. 43 participants now at humans camp. Thermal readings increasing. Ration consumption exceeding projections, but in a communal pattern. Medical vitals showing improved status across the board. Administrator. His assistant's voice was almost panicked. We're receiving formal inquiries from 12 species representatives. They want to know why their participants are congregating. Tell them. Krynathi watched James pull another grain product from the oven and hand it to a shivering Pelvax elder. Tell them we're investigating. What do we tell them we're investigating? Whether making everyone comfortable and well-fed during a survival trial counts as cheating. By day 7, James Wilson had fundamentally broken the winter trial. Krynathi stood in the observation dome, watching feeds from multiple angles. The humans camp now housed 68 participants from 42 different species. 3 large stone ovens operated continuously. Smoke rose in steady columns. The thermal bloom covered nearly 200 square meters. Someone was singing. That's a Havril work song, Vexthul said, his voice hollow. They sing that during communal nest building. Why are they singing it here? Because apparently this has become communal, Azila said. She'd been reviewing footage for 14 hours straight. Her scale's now a disturbed pattern of colors. Look at this. Day 4. He taught the Catharan pair to fire clay. Day 5. He showed a group how to identify edible lichen. Day 6. She fast-forwarded. Day 6, he organized a cooking rotation. A cooking rotation, Krynathi repeated. Participants are volunteering shifts to maintain the ovens and prepare meals. There's a schedule. He made a schedule. On screen, James was explaining something to Vexia, a Velkari female who'd been projected to have a 40% survival probability. She was taking notes. Her cub, Zara, was helping an elderly Havril participant toward the warmth. This was supposed to be individual survival, Vexthul said. Prove your species can endure isolation, scarcity, environmental hostility. Instead, he's created a community kitchen, Azela finished, complete with childcare. Krynathi pulled up the medical reports. 0 fatalities, 0 critical injuries. Malnutrition indicators were not just stable, they were improving, several cubs showing enhanced development compared to baseline. The council is convening, Azila said quietly. They want answers. What do we tell them? The truth. She gestured at the screens. That a human has invalidated 10,000 years of trial data by refusing to suffer. Krynathi watched James demonstrate bread-kneading techniques to a fascinated audience of 5 species. He's not refusing to suffer. He's refusing to accept that suffering is necessary. That's the same thing. Is it? A new alert chimed. The weather system was generating a Category 5 blizzard, scheduled to hit in 18 hours. Projected temperature, minus 115 Celsius. Wind speeds capable of shredding most species' protective gear. Historically, blizzards like this cause 30% casualties among remaining participants. This will test him. Vexthul said with grim satisfaction. Those ovens won't survive sustained winds. The fires will die. He'll learn why the trial is designed as it is. Should we warn them? Kael'thas asked. And interfere with the trial? Absolutely not. They have the same weather sensors we do. They watched James check a crude wind gauge he'd constructed, then gather his community for what appeared to be a meeting. 30 minutes later, construction began on a fourth structure, this one much larger, with thick stone walls and a reinforced roof. What is he building now? Azila demanded. The computer analyzed the structure's design parameters. Insulated communal shelter, estimated capacity, 120 individuals, integrated thermal mass from oven systems, wind-resistant architecture. He's building that in 18 hours, apparently. By hour 12, 80 participants were working on the shelter. James had organized teams, gatherers bringing stones, builders following his architectural directions, others preparing food for the workers. The cubs collected moss for insulation under careful supervision. This is unprecedented, Vexthul admitted. The coordination alone? He's not. Just surviving the blizzard, Kael'thas said. He's preparing to thrive through it. When the storm hit, 127 participants were inside James Wilson's shelter. The remaining 73 who'd stayed in their individual pods faced the blizzard according to traditional trial parameters. The temperature dropped to minus 120. 0 casualties in the communal shelter. Hot food served throughout. Cubs played organized games. 19 casualties among individual shelter occupants in the first 6 hours. Shut it down, Azila said. What? The trial. Shut it down. Send evacuation transports for the individuals still in isolated shelters. This has become an experiment in how badly traditional methods fail compared to human methods. Kael'thas initiated the emergency extraction protocol. Within 2 hours, the surviving traditional participants were pulled out, hypothermic and traumatized. James Wilson's community was teaching each other songs from their home worlds. The council chamber held the highest-ranking survival experts from 40 species. Kael'thas presented his report to absolute silence. To summarize, he concluded, at the midwinter point, where we historically expect 60% elimination, we instead have 0 casualties, optimal health markers across all participants, and what can only be described as a functioning society. Ancient survival master Korvax, who had designed the winter trial 3,000 years ago, spoke first. His voice rasped with age. The human-altered environmental conditions. Yes, Master. Created artificial warmth. Yes, Master. Rendered the trial's challenges irrelevant. Essentially, yes. Korvax was silent for a long moment. In my 3,000 years, I have never seen anyone simply refuse to accept the trial's premise. We test endurance. He demonstrated mastery. Azila stepped forward. Masters of the council, the human didn't survive winter. He defeated it. Our entire testing paradigm assumes participants will adapt to hostile conditions. James Wilson adapted the conditions to himself. That's cheating, someone protested. Is it? Vexthul surprised everyone by speaking. I've reviewed the trial parameters extensively. There is no rule against environmental modification because we never conceived someone would try. We assumed the challenges were too severe, the conditions too extreme. The human took one look at those assumptions and built an oven. But the trial is meant to prove worth through suffering, another council member argued. Why? The question came from Kael'thas. The chamber went silent. Why must worth be proven through suffering? What does the capacity to endure misery actually demonstrate about species viability? It demonstrates strength, Korvac said, but his voice held uncertainty. Resilience, the ability to survive when conditions are hostile. The human survived. Everyone in his shelter survived. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. Isn't that better? On the main screen, live feed showed James teaching a group how to preserve food through smoking. Zara and Zilar, two cubs from species with notoriously poor winter survival rates, were laughing as they helped tend the ovens. Our ancestors died in these trials, Azila said quietly. My own great-grandparent. 43% of my species trial participants never return. We tell ourselves this sacrifice proves our worthiness. But watching this human teach cooking classes in the middle of Kelvar's winter, she trailed off. You're saying we've been doing it wrong, another observer said flatly. I'm saying we've been testing the wrong thing. We measure who can take the most punishment. Humans apparently test who can build the best solution. Kyolthas pulled up James Wilson's species file. Earth experienced multiple ice ages. Humanity survived them all, not through evolutionary adaptations to cold, but through environmental mastery. Fire, shelter, clothing, food preservation. They didn't adapt to the Ice Age. They invented agriculture during it. During an Ice Age? Bexthul looked stunned. That's insane. Or brilliant, Korvac said slowly. We evolved to withstand our planet's challenges. Humans evolved to eliminate them. The chamber's main screen flickered, a priority communication from the winter camp. James Wilson's face appeared, looking apologetic. Hi. Sorry to interrupt. Administrator Kyolthas said I could contact you if there were issues. So, not really an issue, but I wanted to run something by you. The shelter's getting crowded, and I was thinking of building an extension. Maybe add some communal bathing facilities. Heated water would help with hygiene and morale. Also, some folks asked about starting a library. We've got a lot of downtime. Figured we could share knowledge between species. That cool with you guys? Don't want to, violate any sacred trial stuff or whatever. 140 species representatives stared at the screen. Did he just ask permission to install bathing facilities on Kelvar? Someone whispered. And a library, another added. James waited, looking genuinely concerned about protocol violations. Azila began laughing. It started as a small sound, then grew until her whole body shook. He's worried about respecting our sacred trial, while casually proposing to add amenities to a world designed for maximum suffering. Korvac leaned forward. Human James Wilson, I have a question. Sure thing. Why did you not simply remain in your shelter and endure as the trial parameters suggested? James looked confused. Because that's a terrible way to survive? Look, I get that you're testing who's tough enough to handle bad situations. But back home, we learned that the toughest person isn't the one who suffers best. It's the one who figures out how to stop the suffering. You were asking who could survive winter. I just stopped there being a winner, relatively speaking. You stopped winter, Korvac repeated. I mean, it's still cold outside. But inside it's nice. Warm bread, hot soup, good company. That's how humans do winter. We don't tough it out. We build ovens and complain about the weather while staying comfortable. Silence. You're saying, Vexthul said carefully, that humanity's survival strategy is to simply refuse to accept hostile conditions? Pretty much, yeah. We're really good at refusing to accept things. It's kind of our whole deal. Kyolthas stepped forward. Your species faced ice ages. How did you survive them? Oh, we invented a bunch of stuff. Fire, obviously. Clothing, shelter. Then agriculture, because if we're going to be cold, might as well have bread. Then we figured out fermentation, because being cold sucks and beer helps. Then we invented central heating, because beer and bread are better when you're toasty. Then climate control, because why stop there? Basically, we kept inventing things until winter became optional. You made winter optional, Azila repeated faintly. I mean, on Earth we did. Here I'm working with more primitive tech, but same principle. Don't adapt to the problem, adapt the problem away. So, about those bathing facilities? Korvax looked at Azila. Observer, what is your recommendation? I recommend we approve his construction plans, document his methods, and fundamentally restructure the winter trial to test adaptive survival capability rather than suffering endurance. Because if we don't, every species who learns what humanity can do will rightfully ask why we've been killing their people unnecessarily for 10,000 years. The vote was unanimous. James Wilson received approval for his expansion plans and a formal request to serve as an advisor for trial restructuring. His response, cool. Can we also talk about the summer trials? Because I've been thinking about irrigation systems and maybe greenhouses. You guys have greenhouses, right? The Council's horrified, fascinated realization that the human would probably fix every seasonal trial sent ripples through the galactic community for months. 3 months later, as Kelvar's winter finally broke, Krynathi filed his final report. 0 casualties. 187 participants successfully completed the trial. Though completed had lost all traditional meaning. They'd learned 37 different species cooking techniques, established interspecies communication protocols, and collectively produced a detailed manual on Geester cooperative winter survival strategies. The cubs, all 43 of them, had learned to bake bread. Azila stood beside Krynathi in the observation dome, watching the camp prepare for extraction. My great-grandparent would have lived if they'd had someone like James Wilson in their trial. My species lost 20% of our trial participants in the generation before last, Krynathi said quietly. We told ourselves it made us stronger, made us worthy. We were wrong. Yes. On the surface, James was teaching young Xylar how to properly knead dough. The cubs' parents stood nearby, their postures radiating gratitude. They'd expected to lose their child to the winter. Instead, their child was learning to make sourdough. The other seasonal trials are already requesting his consultation, Azila said. Summer desert survival, storm season endurance, abyssal depth testing. They all want to know what he'd do. What do you think he'll do? Probably exactly what he did here. Take one look at our suffering-based testing, say something sarcastic, and then solve the actual problem. Krynathi pulled up the new trial parameters. The Council approved my proposal. Future winter trials will test environmental adaptation capability through innovative problem-solving. Participants will be evaluated on their ability to improve conditions, not merely endure them. Cooperation is now encouraged. Construction is permitted. The goal is thriving, not surviving. Humanity is going to fundamentally change how we measure worth. Maybe that's not a bad thing. They watched James pull fresh bread from the ovens, the cubs helping distribute pieces to everyone present. Someone started singing, that same Havril work song from weeks ago, but now with harmonies from a dozen species. He's planning to participate in the summer trials, Azila said. Says he's thinking about irrigation and greenhouses. The Council is equally terrified and fascinated. As they should be. She smiled. He's going to fix everything we thought was unfixable. and he's going to do it while making jokes and baking bread. That seems to be humanity's approach to most problems. It's a good approach. Krynath's calm chimed. A message from James Wilson. Hey, for the extraction transport, can we bring the ovens? Would hate to waste good infrastructure. Also, is there a way to keep everyone in contact? We've got a really good community going here. Maybe set up some kind of galactic pen pal system? Let me know. Azila read the message over his shoulder and laughed. He wants to maintain the community. Of course he does. Should I approve the oven transport? Absolutely. And the pen pal system. If we're going to learn from humanity, we might as well go all in. Krynathi sent the approvals, then added a personal note. The council would be honored if you'd advise on restructuring all seasonal trials. Your perspective has proven invaluable. Also, yes to greenhouses. The response came quickly. Awesome. Fair warning, though, I'm probably going to make all of your trials way less dramatic. Nobody should have to suffer just to prove they're tough. That's what customer service jobs are for. Did he just compare our sacred trials to employment? Krynathi asked. I believe that's what humans call humor. We should probably study that too. On the surface, James Wilson was teaching the final bread-making lesson to a mixed group of species who learned more about cooperation in 3 months than some civilizations learned in centuries. The ovens radiated warmth. The cubs played safely. Everyone was well-fed, healthy, and genuinely sad to leave. Vex Thule, who'd observed the entire trial, submitted his own report. The final line read, "Humanity doesn't overcome obstacles through strength or endurance. They dismantle the obstacles entirely, usually while complaining about them and making everyone around them more comfortable. This approach is frustratingly effective." As the extraction transports descended through Kelvar's clearing skies, James Wilson looked up at them and then back at his ovens. He smiled, broke off a piece of fresh bread, and handed it to Zara. "Next time," he told the cub, "we'll add cinnamon. Trust me, it's going to blow your mind." The cub chirped happily, already looking forward to the next trial, the next challenge, the next opportunity to learn from the strange human who taught them that survival wasn't about enduring hardship. It was about building ovens and sharing bread. Krynathi filed his final report with one additional note for the council. Recommend immediate assignment of human advisors to all trial worlds. Also recommend increasing food supplies. They're going to feed everyone. The council approved unanimously. Somewhere on Earth, in a small apartment, James Wilson's family received a notification that their son had been offered a permanent position as Galactic Survival Consultant. His mother read the job description and laughed. Of course, he turned a survival trial into a cooking show. That's so, James. His father just shook his head. Think they have good benefits? On Kelvar, the last transport lifted away, carrying 187 participants, 43 cubs, 3 carefully disassembled stone ovens, and enough preserved food to last the journey home. And in the center of the abandoned camp, still radiating residual warmth, stood a stone marker that James had insisted on building before leaving. The inscription, translated into 42 languages, read simply, "Nobody should suffer unnecessarily. Build ovens, share bread, be kind. James Wilson, Earth-Winter Trial, year 10,000 casualties. 0. The council would later declare it the most successful trial in recorded history. James Wilson would later declare it a pretty decent camping trip, honestly. Both were correct.